You're listening to the Casting for Fun podcast, the show that talks about entertainment, sports, music, and inspirational stories for all to enjoy. We're glad that you could join us today. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Now, here is your host, Albert Pineda.
Welcome, everybody, to the Casting for Fun podcast. I am your host, Albert Pineda. And for this week's episode, I'm going to be doing a very Stranger Things-centric episode of the Casting for Fun podcast. Joining me for a conversation about the show will be super fans and good friends of mine, Kim and Nathan Cross, who love the show, and we're going to have a spoilerific conversation about it, going over all the details of season 4, the part 1 of season 4, which just aired on Netflix, talking about the things we love about the show and what could potentially lie ahead of us in the remaining part of season 4, which will be released on July 1st, and beyond for the 5th and final season, which will come out sometime in the future. So this is going to be a really fun conversation. I'm looking forward to chatting with Kim and Nate. It's been quite a while since I talked to them. And and actually, I do want to make a quick correction on the podcast. BYU fans are probably going to be very happy that I'm making this correction. On during our conversation, I had mentioned that BYU had won a national championship in football in 1982, and the show was taking place in 1986. Where the Mormon girl on the show, Susie, has a BYU banner hanging in her wall. So she's obviously a fan. And she probably would have been really ecstatic about the team just winning a national championship a few years before. I got the year wrong. It's actually 1984. And that year they defeated Michigan to go 13-0 in the 1984 Holiday Bowl, which was their last national championship. So I'm sure BYU fans are happy that I'm making that correction and that I'm even talking about BYU football to begin with. So yes, definitely wanted to make that acknowledgement. Also, I wanted to just mention really quick for sports, again, because I'm a huge fan of the World Cup, particularly of the men's national team. Wales defeated the Ukraine. I know the Ukraine would have been the sentimental favorite to move on in the tournament based on everything that's going on, all the horrific things in that country right now. But as it stands, Wales defeated the Ukraine. And now we'll be facing the United States on November 21st. So I definitely had invested interest in that. So looking forward to the World Cup later this year. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be great. Okay, so here we go. This is my conversation with Kimmy and Nathan Cross about Stranger Things Season 4. Joining me now on the Casting for Fun podcast are two very dear friends who I haven't seen in a while. So I'm grateful that I can talk to them now. Nate and Kim Cross. Kim, Nate, how are you guys?
Good. Hello.
Doing awesome. Good to see you.
Good to see you both too. It's really cool that we can geek out and talk about something really cool and awesome like Stranger Things. And, we want to plan ahead for the future too. I very much would love to talk to you guys about Loki season 2 when we get that one.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you're a big Loki fan, so.
Yeah.
But the topic at hand obviously is Stranger Things. So very excited to get to chat with you both about this. Is there anything you guys wanted to talk about, mention before we jump into Stranger Things conversation? And again, this is going to be a massive spoilers for the 4th season that just came out.
Yeah, right. Big spoiler warning.
We've been big fans of the show ever since it started. We love horror in general.
Uh-huh.
And so Stranger Things was a nice show for us to kind of just sink our teeth into. Mm-hmm. And then we did Halloween. We were Hopper and Joyce.
That's true. We were Hopper and Joyce for Halloween.
And our little one was the Mind Flayer.
Oh, awesome.
Monster, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Very good. Very good. So, before we jump into season 4, I actually wanted to just talk about Stranger Things in general. Like, it kind of seems to me that the show became like a cultural phenomenon seemingly overnight. Because I remember like when the first season came out, I wasn't even aware of it. Like I just heard lots of people talking about it on social media, friends of mine who didn't know each other. They just knew me and they were just mentioning, hey, you got to check out this show. It's really good. So do you remember how you both found out about Stranger Things, the first season?
It certainly wasn't through marketing or promotion. It was word of mouth. It was friends that told us, probably Gio at work, maybe someone that told us to watch it.
Yeah, it was around the time like Netflix was still somewhat in its infancy, I guess you could say, and Stranger Things was that one show that everyone had to watch, and suddenly Netflix subscriptions were through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we were one of them at that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was
Oh, yeah.
probably one of the first shows we ever watched on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, very cool, very
Yeah.
cool. And then Nate, you touched on it just briefly earlier. What do you think would be the appeal of the show? I mean, obviously you mentioned the horror aspect, and then I guess maybe it's just fun and thrilling. What do you think it was so appealing to you?
To me or to the public?
Or just for
To me?
you specifically, yeah, for you and Kim.
For me, I think it was the fact that it was, you know, it had the horror vibes going, which I really enjoyed. There was, you know, every season there's always a little mystery that kind of gets woven into it too. So there's something to pull apart and discuss. And those are the kinds of shows that we tend to enjoy a lot, because then we have a lot that we can talk about afterwards. And of course, talking about it with other people, like with you, is always a really fun treat as well, because everyone comes away with something different. So that's also kind of fun about it. And there is the nostalgia aspect to it as well, which for me is fun, but not necessarily something I need or crave.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, oh, that's a neat little homage to E.T.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Did you guys catch the movie Super 8 that came out just a few years before with
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it almost
Yeah.
kind of the same vibes. Like, it was just a coincidence, I think, that it had come out. So, you know, set in the late 70s, but very similar thing of like a small city in the Midwest getting like a alien invasion, so to speak. But also dealing with the human side of it, like the individual stories. So that the characters have to go through, like what's going on in their lives, which I thought was really fascinating too. So again, I love the cultural throwbacks that they do, like basing it on the 80s, but also just the character growth that each character goes through and how they interact with each other. I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The characters are excellent, and they've only been better this season.
Oh yeah. Very cool. Anything else you want to bring up with one of the earlier seasons, either 1 through 3?
No, for me, it was absolutely the 80s nostalgia. That was a big draw for me. And it was the characters. I was really struck with the quality of the writing and how many characters there were and how much I liked them all. That's what really got me hooked on this show, is how much I liked the characters. And that's generally my rule for investing time in a show, is I have to like at least one character. Because if I don't like anyone, I'm not going to be interested in the story. I'm not going to care about them.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
so-
Yeah.
And the fact that I like and care about virtually all of the characters in this show, that says a lot.
Yeah, they did an amazing job casting the show.
Mhm.
And yeah, we'll talk more about it later, but they've done a fantastic job casting the show, writing the show. The music of the show
this
too.
is so good. Yeah, that was another
The
big
music's
big
another
draw, was the music. Yeah.
Not just the 80s music, which is of course excellent.
Yeah.
But the overall
The
score
soundtrack, the
and
instrument
soundtrack
score, yeah.
is very well done.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah,
You hear that tone for like the bom 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 for the upside down, and you just go, ooh, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Something about that synth-based soundtrack is just
Yeah. And
delicious.
for me too, the horror aspect, in my opinion, the first season is the scariest.
Mhm.
That season is terrifying. And yeah, we're big horror fans, like Nathan said earlier. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So going back to character development, one character arc that I've really enjoyed the past couple of seasons would actually be Steve Harrington's. And it's actually kind of interesting that what I've read in online articles about it was that the Duffer Brothers weren't initially going to keep him around, but I guess because he was so likable that they gave him like a redemption arc. So he went from being kind of like a jerk in season 1 to being maybe one of the most likable characters on the show. And I love just watching the bromance between Steve and Dustin. It's just really fun to see them together.
it's so cute. Yeah.
Yeah, and that of course pays off even more in this season too.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is, again, another point we can talk about in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, perfect. Okay. So I think we're ready to go ahead and jump into season 4. So very exciting that it came out, that it was put together the way it was. It was very interesting that they wanted to split it in 2 parts. Even though we did get the majority of the episodes, I guess the remaining episodes are actually going to be almost like feature-length, movie length. right?
Oh, really?
Yes, that's what I've heard as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
yay.
I think one of them is supposed to be about an hour long, and then the other one's supposed to be like an hour 45 minutes. It's almost 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it should be
Awesome. Yay.
impressive.
Okay, so what were your initial thoughts and impressions with season 4 that we've done right now? And again, massive spoilers right now, so we're talking about everything season 4 that's just happened.
Okay.
You go first.
Thoughts and impressions were, man, it was it's hard seeing them all so separated, because they're literally, it's 4 different storylines that we're following pretty much, right?
Yeah.
All the different groups. So that's a little challenging because it was almost kind of like when you're reading Lord of the Rings, and sometimes if you are more of a fan of following Frodo and Sam, you're cool half the time. The rest of the time you're just frustrated because you just want to get back to Frodo and Sam. But we love all these characters so much that, and it was so well written and so well edited that it didn't bug me at all that we would have to leave this one really compelling storyline to jump to another, because all 4 storylines were really compelling, so I didn't mind that at all. And I liked the diversity, the fact that we were in all these different settings, different countries in some instances, with Joyce and Hopper and Murray. So I really liked that. It's unique to this season for sure.
It did make some of the pacing of the overall season a little jerky at times, because we were bouncing around a fair amount, especially towards the latter episodes. But like, my general impression walking away from this season is this is the best season since season 1. That's my general feeling. I just, like Kimmy was saying, all of the characters have been developed to a point where I will be heartbroken if and when they die.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even in seasons 2 and 3, I really didn't care for Max or Billy or some of the other characters that they just kind of pulled in there. But this season, I deeply cared for Max.
Yeah,
and
same.
She
I didn't like her at
won
first.
me
Now I
over.
do. Yeah.
And even Billy's cameo in there was used to great effect. It was really well done, and I was like, wanted it. So yeah, I think it says a lot that what Kimmy was saying, this season I feel like was one of the strongest seasons since season 1, just because every single character, every single storyline had something that kept you wanting to come back to it, even if, and including the new characters introduced in this season, they're all fantastic.
Yeah.
Like Argyle. Love that guy.
And Eddie.
And Eddie, true, and Eddie.
So great.
And even Murray, because we get more Murray in this season than
Karate
we had
Murray.
before. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That was really
that
funny.
part.
Yeah. Going back to Max and her story arc, it's kind of funny when you watch these shows, like you think like, you have your main characters and they're going to go through like the struggles they go through and the trials they go through and everything like that. There was a part of me for a split second thinking, I think the Duffer Brothers are actually going to pull the trigger. I think they're going to kill Max right there at that spot. But they didn't, which I'm happy that they didn't. But there's a part of me that thinks that even though I love her character, maybe they should have at that moment. I don't know. But it was a pretty intense scene, that whole sequence when she in the grasp of Vecna, and like seeming like that she was gonna die right at that moment.
Right. And we get that epic moment with Kate Bush
Yeah.
and running up that hill. It was so good. I think
really well done.
I think everybody who has seen that has fallen in love with that scene. It's just very well done. I think we needed to see that Vecna could at least be unsuccessful, maybe not necessarily defeated, but unsuccessful, that they had a means of rescuing people who were in the
That's true. We
grasp.
needed to see that it could work. So I guess
So
if they did kill Max off at that moment, I don't know what they could.
what they would do at that point.
Yeah.
But we are, I think, 100% convinced that certain main characters are going to die. So we can talk about that. But I don't think
I'm
Max,
not going to say 100% certain.
Oh, I'm fairly certain.
If not this season, then I think season 5 when we get our, which is reported to be going to be the final season. I think I think we'll have some, but
yeah.
I think we'll have at least 1 or 2 major deaths. in the final 2 episodes. But we'll get to that.
I don't know. I'm still on the fence. I don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
But it could.
It could happen.
It could, yeah. So I'm gonna jump to 11 and her story going on right now. Initially when I was watching it, like I was almost kind of like feeling bad and thinking, I don't know if we really need to get more bullying scenes from the kids, because I mean they've already been bullied like mercilessly, and then we're getting more from that Angela girl. And there was a part of me that was actually kind of happy that she took a roller skate to the face.
Oh, I loved it too.
But it is nice and interesting to see what they're going with now that they've again, spoilers, that they brought back Matthew Modine to play Renner. And I mean, it's kind of funny. So going back to watch or to prepare for season 4, I binged all 3 seasons. And in season 1, in the finale, the Demogorgon like jumps out at Brenner, kind of drags him down below the screen, but we don't see what happens. I think we just automatically assume that he died. So I'm hoping that we get maybe more of an explanation as to what actually happened. But what are your thoughts on Matthew Modine returning as Brenner in season 4?
I personally think his face should have been way more jacked up. He's got just this teeny little scar just right here. And it's like, okay, no, we've just seen what happens when the Demogorgon noms someone's head, right? At that scene in Russia.
Yeah.
And if the Demogorgon did that to Brenner, he wouldn't have just this little scar right here. I want to see some deformity. I want to see some Phantom of the Opera level, like, that could have been cool.
Missing an ear, stuff like that. Like very
at least throw an eye patch on him, or
Yeah.
But the fact that he got away with just this little itty bitty right there, I was like, oh, okay, come on. So I do hope they give us more of an explanation as to how he managed to get away from the Demogorgon with apparently just a little scratch on his face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
overall, I think we were kind of happy to see more Dr. Brenner, just because he's such an enigmatic figure in season 1. And by the time that we finally kind of start to understand what was happening at Hawkins Labs, Brenner's then gets nommed, by the Demogorgon. So it's nice to get more backstory and get to know his character a little bit more. Yeah. And he's definitely still a very Shades of Grey character.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to understand what his motivation exactly is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a part of me that wonders if he knows more about what's going on than even the rest of the cast or protagonists know about, the Upside Down and things like that. Like maybe that's how he escaped. He knew something and had something.
The way they brought him back, the way they unveiled him was so dramatic. That's just how they're going to do it, right? It's going to be dramatic. But in practical terms, it's like, why did they have to scare the living crap out of poor Jane like that? Like, why couldn't Owens have given her more of a warning, beforehand to make her not feel so trapped? I just wish that they could have been a little nicer to her.
That's actually
my
main critique of the 11 storyline in this season so far has been the fact that they have put her through more trauma than they really needed to. Mm-hmm. And by the time they finally level with her, that's like the moment when she's like, okay, I'm on board. So it's like they should have just leveled with her to begin with. I agree. I don't think we needed to see all these bullying scenes. They kind of felt unnecessary, but at least at the point where we are now, because there doesn't seem to be a reason for that other than to show, things are still really tough for her.
Yeah.
And then maybe this underlying question of like, oh no, did she snap and kill all those people at Hawkins Labs in her flashback? Is she going to snap and do it again?
Yeah, because they wanted us to see to suspect that of her, because we saw the way she snapped and smashed Angela's face in with the roller skate.
Yeah.
So they wanted us to suspect that she was the one that killed all the kids in the lab.
But if that's the case, then I probably would have snapped and killed all the kids in the lab, because I wanted Angela to get smashed in the face with a nice roller skate too. If that's the criteria, I don't know. I don't think it worked very well. I didn't feel super convinced that it
was. Did it feel like forced conflict?
A little forced. Okay. Yeah. And then part way through the season, I started to suspect that we're not seeing any of these people's faces of the dead bodies in Hawkins' lab. She keeps having flashbacks of all these dead bodies.
Yeah,
We're
he's
not
like,
seeing
you
their
don't see their
faces.
eyes.
We
You
don't see their eyes. Wait a minute. Because
Yeah.
the whole Vecna killing card, right? With the eyes popping.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Going back
that's when I started
to Brenner. So I mean, again, I don't think it's been really addressed on the show, but again, in my mind, I just keep thinking, okay, so I agree with you, Nate, that I think he might know more about the Upside Down than he's letting on, and that the rest of us know, because I keep thinking and wondering, okay, why are they experimenting on kids to begin with? What is their end objective? So if he's like that shades of gray type of thing, I mean, does he understand the threat of the Upside Down, and is he looking to build these kids in order to protect us and save humanity? Because again, we go into that whole explanation with Owens when he's trying to pitch and sell 11 on why they need her. Like, we have the contingency, we have this program that can actually restore your powers, and not only that, make you even more powerful. So again, it'll be interesting to see where that goes or what happens, but I can't help but think that we're gonna find out, hopefully sooner rather than later, what is the purpose of the experimentation on the kids.
Yeah.
And maybe that will come as we get more of the backstory of Brenner and One.
Maybe. Yeah.
Very cool. And then with One, I mean, I was actually a pretty cool twist. I didn't predict that. I don't know. Did either of you kind of have a hint or suspicion that he was Vecna all along?
I suspected partway towards the end that he was One.
Uh-huh.
That's true.
I suspected that maybe the reason I had suspected that 11 had done all that, but I had suspected that she had done it because she had perhaps been possessed by Vecna and to do all this, and that part of Vecna's plot of killing all these teens in Hawkins is actually to lure 11 back to potentially wreak havoc again. But I didn't see the twist coming of, it was actually One who's Vecna who did all this. And it took me a while even to figure out that the main guy who'd been talking with 11 there all that time was One. I didn't catch it until like right almost before it happened.
Yeah, and the only hint I had was the actor that they chose to play him as a child. I just remember thinking as we were seeing him, I remember thinking, that's an odd choice. Like, because he's a little strange looking, right? And I remember thinking something really mean, like, oh, he must be someone's nephew. Like, that just wanted to get into the show. So they cast this weird looking little kid. But that was it. That's like the only hint I had. And it wasn't really even me realizing, oh, there's something different about this kid. It was me just noticing he looks a little strange. But yeah, I didn't see it coming.
Once One started just tearing through the hallway of people, I was like, oh yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's when it finally all fell into place for me. So I think they did a great job of, like, they teased it, they gave us enough information, but they still surprised us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a question about, I guess, like the scare factor then for this one. So it was interesting to me, Kim, that you would pick season 1 as the scariest season so far. And then we just mentioned before we started recording that I've already watched all of the whole season through. And then Allison specifically asked me to do that because she gets very scared of things like this. So when we watch it together, I have to watch it, know everything that's going to happen, and then tell her every single jump scare, every single spoiler in case. So just in general, I guess compared to the previous seasons, I mean, like I had to previously explain to her, like, hey, this is the way Vecna kills people. It's actually pretty gruesome, pretty intense. So I guess compared to previous seasons, where do you think season 4 would land as far as like the scare jumps go?
As far as scare jumps go, honestly, I wasn't very scared. I was grossed out.
Yeah.
I was shocked, but scared, not really. The first season was the scariest for me, mostly because it was very novel and unique at that point. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what the Upside Down was. We didn't know what the Demogorgon really was.
We didn't know the rules.
Yeah, we didn't know the rules. So I think that's why the first season will always be the scariest, because at that point you didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
and with the, season 2, season 3, season 4, they're just kind of building on what we know. And so for me, it was a little over the top, the way that Vecna was killing people, the bodies getting contorted and the eyes popping and all that, and the jaw. For me, I was like, are they just trying to compensate at this point because they know they can't scare us as much as they did with the first season? Yeah, I don't know.
I kind of agree too. The other part of it for me was when they do the first Vecna kill, Chrissy.
Mm-hmm.
That was shocking.
It was surprising for sure. I was like, whoa, what's going on? Not necessarily
scary. Of course, the whole Freddy Krueger thing going on where she's kind of like trapped in her mind and she can't escape. Mm-hmm. That wasn't really all that scary. And then the CG they used to sell us on the bodies with all that happening, it didn't look great. That's kind of that was another main block. Like, I'd say one of the biggest negatives for me for this whole season was that the CG was just not super great.
The de-aged Elle too looked a little creepy.
Oh man, the de-aged Elle. I really, every time the camera was on her for more than 2 seconds, I was like, pan away, pan away, pan away.
No, but talking about the horror, if the visual effects had been a little more on point, maybe it would have been a little more scary. Mm-hmm. I think almost it would have been scarier if we didn't see what was going on in Chrissy's head. And we only really saw it from Eddie's perspective, where there's this girl, she looks a little dazed, a little scared, confused, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she floats into the air and just dies. That would have been more like, what the heck's going on? Whoa, what did that to her? Versus, like you said, going the Freddy Krueger route, where it was like, it's in her head, okay, scary, big shock factor. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. And a lot of they do have jump scares in this season too, but generally they're somewhat telegraphed, and I don't think there was a single jump scare that really got us.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, not so much, because again, like you said, I think because I'm so accustomed to the show now, I think I can almost anticipate that something's going to happen. But again, there could be just those moments of suspense, like, oh, are they actually going to do this? Like I was referring back earlier to the Max scenario.
Right.
Yeah. The suspense is there in the season for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love with just horror, just that they would actually get Robert Englund to come and play Victor.
That was cool.
It was really cool. Yeah.
We like that a lot.
That was really cool.
Very cool. So we haven't touched on them yet, but I want to briefly talk about what's going on with the boys trying to go find 11 now. So I got a kick out of the whole scene where they go to Salt Lake City and then try and go find Susie. So that would be Will, Jonathan, and Mike, and Argyle driving the pizza van. So that the whole sequence is just funny to me. Like when she has her pictures of Jesus Christ in her room, and it's kind of like not the Mormon version.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. So what do you like about with them going on with their story and with Susie?
I'll just start by saying I loved, it was so nice to see Mormons being portrayed in the media as mostly like normal, like how they would be. That's what you would see if you walked into a house,
with
an LDS household with like 10 kids. It would be just like that, and it was funny. It was so funny, and it was very refreshing. And I'll just mention this real quick. We briefly tried to watch Under the Banner of Heaven on Hulu, which also portrays Mormons in the 80s, and it was horrendous. We couldn't get through even one episode.
Oh, really?
It was so cringy. Like the writing was awful. I was like, has this writer even ever heard an LDS person speak? That's not how we talk. Like what? It was bad. I do not recommend. So to see this was just such, it was so refreshing. Yeah.
And oh gosh, what was the youngest one's name?
Cornelius.
He has the nicest, most like eloquent name, and he is the most feral child. They encounter him first, just battle cry, scream, and run into the house shirtless. Yeah. think he shoots Jonathan in the head, or no, it was Mike
with an like
with a suction cup arrow. Yeah, that whole scene from beginning to end, like even when they cut away and came back, that whole bit was just super fantastic.
It was great.
And the whole setup of them like running through, seeing all the kids going upstairs, Argyle meeting Eden,
like the garden.
And he's smitten immediately. And then the whole bit with the dad having to go downstairs because Cornelius has flipped the breaker yet again, and going through all of the chaos again, and him like actually believing his one daughter who's acting is actually choking on her own blood. Oh, it was perfect, Dad. You really sold it there. It was just like you felt like it was happening for real. It was such a great scene.
I really liked it. I love Susie, and I hope they keep her around. She's so great, and I want to know how she has her own bedroom in that house.
Yeah,
with all those kids.
With all those kids, yeah.
I
thought it was great.
Everything.
Really cool how they're. Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
Oh no, so I'll let you go first.
Oh, okay. I was gonna just say that it's really great to see her portrayed as just being like the super genius. I think that's really cool and fun. And to hear her just talking about the internet back in 1986, right? It's just
talking about ISPs.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a good inspiring thing for young girls to see. Hey, you can be smarter than the boys actually. So
that was very cool.
They had to drive cross country to get her help.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I agree. I think it's an awesome message.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, it seems like the story of Mike and Will and Jonathan and Argyle leading up to that point was a little clunky, but I love Jonathan and Argyle together.
Yeah.
Like any scene with Argyle, he just made it so much better, especially in a season that's so heavy on trauma for so many characters. So many characters are just having the worst time. And then you get Argyle and Jonathan, you're like, oh, finally it's a breath of fresh air. And it's hilarious, of course, they call it a fresh breath air, or fresh air for them because they're toking it up a lot. So, but it was just really refreshing to have a new character that just brought so much life into the show. It was much needed in this season.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I love Susie. I also like the BYU banners she has in her room.
Oh yeah.
That made me happy to see.
I love that she's up on top of the roof wearing a hard hat and boots.
Yeah.
Adjusting her antenna.
And then actually, I guess just in real life, or for that time frame, it was just a few years prior that BYU had actually won a national championship, right, for football.
Oh, okay,
82, I want to say.
Probably, I don't know.
Okay. But not that Susie would really care about football, but again, I guess you have the school pride, you'd be like really beaming about that.
Yeah.
But okay, cool. So I'd like to touch on the four boys. Again, it seems kind of strange and funny to me that we haven't seen them together as much as we did back in season 1. But almost because, again, as we talked about with the character growth, everybody's growing up, and it's just a natural stage in life. As you become teenagers, some of you lose interest in what they had done previously. Like we see that Will's the only one who really still loves playing D&D, or wanted to in season 3, where the other guys wanted to run off with their girlfriends. And now we see in season 4 that Lucas is, the basketball star and the jock. So I guess I wanted to bring up or ask your opinions on what you think of the dynamic between the 4 boys now that they're older and they're all at different stages of their lives.
I thought it was very realistic. And I appreciated that a lot. Like just seeing Lucas, like he kind of wants to still hang out with them. And you can see at certain points, like as he's leaving the basketball game, he just took the winning shot, and he sees his friends leaving the D&D game with his sister. And you can see on his face, like the disappointment that his friends weren't there to see him make this winning basket. But at the same time, you can also get this sense of like, oh man, I wish I was there with them. And I just thought that was really refreshing and very realistic to start drifting apart like that. But then of course we get to see them come together again, which is nice.
Well, not all 4 of them.
Not all 4 of them, not yet.
Yeah.
But Lucas does return to the group.
Well, yeah. Okay, I got you. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Lucas and Justin. Yeah.
No,
I pretty much agree with everything Nathan just said. I think it's realistic. It's natural to, kind of start to grow apart you know, in your separate interests. And my one of my thoughts about the boys actually is how odd some of them have grown up to look like.
Yeah, Mike is kind of a weird looking kid.
Yeah. Plus his little heart. He was a cute little kid in the first, you know, and second seasons, but since then it's just like, oh my goodness. He's still such a good actor though. Like, no criticism there. It's just funny. Dustin a little bit too.
But again, I feel like that's realistic too. Like,
yeah, no, you get goofy looking when you're a teenager. Yeah. That's how you look. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been another thing that's been fun, I think, for these characters and for us, is to see them grow up. Like we're literally watching them grow up. Like it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's fun, except something else we were noting is that how grown up they do look. They're in their 20s now, these actors, and they're playing. Do you know what grade they're supposed to be in high school?
I think freshman, right? Freshman
or sophomore, right? Like one of and it's like,
I think one of the jock bullies that are going on like the witch hunt to like track down Eddie. I think they mentioned that Lucas is a freshman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, they're playing 14-year-olds. So Nathan was saying for the next season they might have to do a time jump to compensate for how much these kids have grown up. How adult they look now, especially Will. He looks and sounds like a man, and it's like
the COVID delay certainly didn't help.
No, it was that for sure. But I also want to talk about what is going on with Will and his possible crush on Mike. We were debating that. We're not sure what's going on there, but that's something that's definitely developed recently.
Well, they have hinted all the way back to the first season that Will could potentially be gay.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that's going to be explored more in these last 2 episodes.
Well, I guess he has that painting. The painting that he hasn't unveiled yet. And then 11, when she was doing her monologue talking about it, like mentioning that she thought that maybe he was interested in a girl, but then we see like, you know, there's a classroom scene where the girl wants to play footsie with him, and he kind of just like shrugs her off.
Yeah, he's like, nah. Yeah. So I feel bad for Will.
Yeah,
I feel really bad for him. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
We haven't touched on Hopper yet. Hopper, Joyce, and Murray. So I think let's just touch on them really quick before we begin to wrap up. But it's interesting to me that the Russians would first get a hold of a Demogorgon and have one in their possession. I guess they're aware of the Upside Down. I'm assuming it wasn't specifically said in season 3, but I was assuming because they were trying to open a gate to the Upside Down that they wanted to get the creatures from inside to potentially use against the U.S. in a Cold War. That was just kind of me putting in my own thoughts of what I thought they would potentially be doing. So they get that, and then we also see that the Demogorgon is just going to town. Whereas I guess before, the Demogorgon would actually try and kidnap people for their own purposes, like, you know, kidnapped Will and kidnapped Barbara. So it is interesting to see what they're doing now as far as like weaponizing a Demogorgon.
Yeah, that is a good point. Because that's what he would do. He'd kidnap you and then put his little babies in you, right? So they could grow. Yeah, that's true. He's just a straight up predator now. And
it might be one of those things where we saw a lot of demo dogs in season 3. Maybe they acquired one of those demo dogs and literally grew it up into.
The demo dogs were season 2.
Season 2?
Yeah, that's the one where Bob died.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. But we see more of the Demodogs in season 3.
We do?
Yeah. When 11 has to close the big giant gate, there's Demodogs literally climbing up the elevator that she and Hopper are in.
Oh, and that's also season 2. I'm sorry.
That is season 2. I'm so sorry. I'm mixing things up.
What you said earlier, Albert, though, about the Russians kidnapping the Demogorgon, I think in season 3, don't we see a big cage that Dustin notes when they're, you know, underneath the mall? In the Russians, their secret base, there's this big cage, and that's kind of, I think, the big hint, like they're trying to catch one, you know, and obviously they were successful. because now they've got this Demogorgon
that makes more sense.
that they're training on these poor prisoners.
Yeah, and it seems like they're just starving it until they're ready to let it out, and it's just so hungry that it's just massacring them.
Yeah.
That was a pretty intense scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, that was pretty gross. So the one guy who's standing there, and the Demogorgon's behind him, and just noms his entire
Just gets his
head
head.
from behind.
Oh,
No.
yeah. But as soon as Hopper walked into that room with the feast on the table with all the prisoners, I was like, they're gonna fatten you up so you can feed that Demogorgon. And then he starts to, come to the same conclusion. I was like, oh gosh, this is so brutal. Ah. But yeah.
Yeah.
But
The
yeah,
whole-
I love how we got to see how resourceful Hopper is. Like, he knows how to survive against the Demogorgon, and he has started hatching his plan to escape from Russian captivity. So it was really cool. I love I'm trying to blank on his name now. He was just in Black Widow. David Harbour.
Yeah.
Harbour. Really, really great actor. I think he's tremendous in the role. And then it's been really great for Winona Ryder. I mean, I guess like a career resurgence for her to be getting to cast as.
I love Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
She's so great.
I do want to mention like David Harbour's Hopper's whole monologue in the prison to Enzo about like more of his background, which I didn't think we were going to get, about why he and his wife and their daughter, how that whole situation played out with
Why
her
the daughter
dying,
got sick.
why she got sick and died.
Yeah.
Oh man, I told Kimmy right after that happened, I was like, I didn't think they could make Hopper even more tragic than he already was, and they did. And that scene is just heart-wrenching. And yeah, I completely 100% agree. Like David Harbour,
His acting is on point. He's so good. Yeah.
It was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And then of course every scene after that too, he's just really nailing it.
Oh my gosh. And the moment where he finally sees Joyce and she hugs him and he just kind of stares blankly for a second and then he slowly smiles and hugs her back. Like you could tell for a second he thought, I'm just imagining this, and then he slowly realized, oh my gosh, she's actually here. That was so sweet and just really well done.
Grateful we got that moment. Didn't have to wait for the last 2 episodes to come out to see it.
Yeah.
But now we're gonna have to wait on how they make their escape, how they're gonna make it back to the States. So
yes.
Yep. We like Enzo. We want anything to happen to him, but I think something's gonna happen to him. It's like, no.
and Murray is just fantastic.
Oh,
we love Murray. He is such a fun and a great character. He's safe.
No, I think so.
If they killed him, we would riot.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, like you mentioned, I'm grateful that we don't have to wait too long for the next part of season 4. I mean, just a few more weeks. So July 1st will be here before we know it. We pretty much covered all the talking points that I wanted to go over. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss or talk about for the show?
We got a couple of things here. I think we touched on most of what we had here.
I have a prediction I'd like to put forth.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
I think I don't want this to happen, but I think Eddie is going to die. But here's first point of logic is that most secondary characters die. Barbara, Bob, Billy.
Yeah.
Eddie, right? I don't know how they're going to clear his name. I don't, unless they can convince the police that the Upside Down does exist and that it was Vecna. Which I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know how else the writers are going to take care of Eddie other than making him the hero and then killing him off.
They've also been hinting at it because Eddie has talked a lot about how he tends to run away. I always run away. And he keeps emphasizing that point. So it's like, oh, there's going to be this moment where he will feel like he should run away, but he won't. And that'll be the moment when he finally bites the dust. And he's also talked about Dustin and Mike as the future of the Hellfire Club. You guys will eventually take over for me. Hint, hint. I might not make it out of this season. So we'll see how that plays out. So his odds aren't great.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think his guitar is going to come into play in the last 2 episodes.
That'd be pretty cool. Yeah.
I want to see it happen.
One other thing I want to talk about,
Hopper's
survival of the explosion at the end of season 3.
Mm-hmm.
There were fan theories just all over the place about how he could survive. None of them, I don't think, were like, he just fell under the machine. And he was fine. It's like that thing vaporized everyone in that room. Why not Hopper? Like, I hope they at least explain that at some point. Like, why did he escape without hardly a scratch?
I don't
He
know.
looked fine. He didn't even look burned. Like, he was in this huge fireball. He didn't get vaporized. He didn't get burned. And he was just boop, under the machine. And why didn't Joyce, like, look? I feel like if she just kind of leaned over that console a little and like, oh, he's right down there, then, you know, could have avoided all this, you know, this whole Russia subplot.
I don't think they're ever going to give us a good reason why he survived. I'm so sorry. Hop survives because Ryder immunity.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. They should have given us a better reason how he survived that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One other point that I wanted to bring up, just to see if they're going to possibly do this in the remaining episodes we have, or most likely maybe save it for season 5. Will we see 8 again and possibly see her help team up with 11 to potentially take down the Upside Down? I don't know how effective her powers would be inside the Upside Down, maybe to trick the Mind Flayer, because I guess the Mind Flayer is technically still around, where, you know, Vecna's his 5-star general and the Mind Flayer is the main threat. So I can't help but think that they are going to bring her back in some capacity, but we might have to wait till season 5 for her.
She could be useful. You're right. Although I do wonder if they're going to avoid her entirely because of how much everyone hated that episode.
Oh yeah, that placement in season 2. Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think they will pay it off. I think we will see them again. I think it will happen in season 5.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll happen in this season.
No.
Part of my prediction is that, and we've been talking about this, like Vecna's been opening portals as he's been killing people all over Hawkins. Why? Because they're going to do an invasion from the Upside Down. So I think season 5 is going to literally be kind of almost a Red Dawn-esque sort of thing where everyone in the town is going to band together and have to try to fight the forces of the Upside Down.
That could be fun.
Could be fun. We'll see.
Yeah. Only other point I see here we wanted to talk about was Vecna, his Palpatine moment, getting electrocuted by evil lightning.
Yeah.
Looks like Palpatine.
Yeah.
It's like, do we need to see that? Like,
we just saw him get atomized by
shredded.
11 as he's getting thrown.
You just assume.
But then suddenly he's in the Upside Down and he's got all his clothes on. He looks just fine, and then all of a sudden, evil lightning, and it was a little much.
Yeah,
but the actor who plays Vecna /1 / what's his
we don't know his
name?
Real name.
I think we.
I don't think we know. Do we know his real name?
I had to Google search. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think we did know his name, but it doesn't matter. That actor just he's pulling off the evil pretty darn well. I like him.
Yeah, he was great. That twist was great. We did not predict Nancy getting pulled in at all. Like, that was a complete surprise.
Yeah, Nancy getting pulled by Vecna was like, what?
Yeah.
No, we expected Steve or Eddie
Steve
at that
Eddie.
point.
Yeah.
Steve. I still think Steve might bite the dust. We'll see.
Yeah.
Please no.
Okay. Well, that's pretty much everything I had. I think, are we good to wrap up for tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. This was so much fun, and I can't wait to get together to talk about the remaining of season 4 and then beyond. And I love doing this podcast. It's just fun for me to connect with friends, talk to them, see how they're doing, and just geek out about stuff that we love. So
yeah, this is awesome. Thank you very much for inviting us. This is really cool.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Okay, well, huge thanks to Kim and Nathan Cross for joining me on the Casting for Fun podcast, and have a good night. Thanks, everyone.